Well, here goes another project for me, another DIY. I am going to change out the off-road grille on my 19 Tacoma, and I'm going to replace it with the TRD Pro grille and the 4 lights that come with it. I guess they're Raptor type of lights. So it'll be fun. Let's give it a shot. All right, the first thing you have to do is take off these 2 bolts. And then I will, there's a pin on each side. I'm going to take these pins off. And for these here, you just get a little screwdriver, get it underneath, pop it up, and just pull the little pin out, both sides. Okay, once you have the 2 screws and pins out, you want to make sure you disconnect the sensor, which is inside the Toyota symbol. What I do is I took this off here, dropped it out, and then I'm going to pull this apart. There's a little little piece of plastic here you got to get underneath to lift it up. I use a small screwdriver to get underneath that so it can disconnect. Basically, I put the screwdriver under here and lifted that pin, and then was able to pull this apart. So now this is actually connected. We can take the whole thing apart once we have it off the truck, but that separates it here. So once you have everything disconnected, you just kind of lift up a little bit, and you got to just get a good grip on this thing. Just like that. I have one piece I got to disconnect right here. There we go. So should lift right on out, and there you go, it's off. Okay, the next step is to remove the sensor, and I'm going to take the 3 screws out. You got one on both sides, pretty simple. There should be one under this covering here, which is glued on. Right there, had to expose it first. All right, once you got the 3 screws removed, this thing just comes off. And then you have to disconnect 3 these plastic clips that hold the cable in. So I've gotten 2 out so far. What they don't show you, a lot of people who do these videos, is this is not super easy to get these off. You've got to get, there's 2 sides to it that you got to loosen up. Use a screwdriver, get one started. And then they come out. So now this is totally separated and ready to be put aside for the next phase. So the next phase is taking out these screws here, and there are, I believe, about 18 screws you have to remove, and then once we do that, we can separate the 2 pieces. Pretty simple. I'm going to go back and double check to make sure I didn't miss any before I try to separate. So when you want to separate the insert with the frame, you kind of got to go around here and just push these in a little bit. Just be careful because they're plastic. One thing I want to mention about taking the original grill off, if you're going to keep it, you got to be careful removing these tabs, and you got to work your way around slowly and disconnect them. If you're not going to keep this grill, it's not so important that you don't break these tabs, but if you want to save it for any reason, then you just got to really work around it carefully and remove them. I suggest removing the outer piece first, and you can see they're a little bit different in shape and color, so you'll be able to see that and work around, take that off, and then come back and take the other part off. If you're not going to keep it, it's not a big deal, but if you do want to save it, then just take your time and work with it. And you want to have a second person because it's much easier. And if you do use a screwdriver, you're going to typically break a lot of the tabs. And I did actually break a couple tabs. As you see right here, I used a screwdriver on a couple of them at first, and this tab here is actually broken. One or two is not a big deal, but if you break a bunch of them, you're not going to be able to reuse it. So take your time, and hopefully you have someone to help you. It's much easier. All right, so the next phase is to put on the Toyota emblem. Okay, so once you've got the Toyota emblem back in, now is to put the sensor plate in. You've got 2 round snaps and 2 flat snaps, and they line up right here. Okay, so once the sensor is snapped into place, you can put the sensor cover, actually, you can put the sensor back on just like you took it off with the same 3 bolts. So you'll need to put these on right here. Slide them in. There you go. Get them all started. We'll do the silver one first here because it's got a catch. The other ones move around a little bit. All right, the sensor's reattached. All right, don't worry about reconnecting this yet. What you want to do now is you want to reconnect the new grille with the frame. And in doing so, you got to be careful. These are plastic and you don't want to break any of these tabs. So just line it up. There you have it. You got it back together. Pretty simple. All right, so there's actually, out of the 18, only 10 will be used because you're not using the screws you needed for the chrome attachment that you had on there before. We no longer have that, so the other 8 would have attached that portion. So you're only going to use 10 of the screws to put it back together. Okay, so I don't know if you're doing this, but if you're installing lights, these came separately, but I got them from Cali Raised along with the grill. So these are pretty simple. You just pick out where you want them. I have 4, so I'm gonna put all 4 of them on here. There can be 1 there, and then I'll do skip that one, do this one, do that one, and then do that one. So that's what it's going to look like once I snap them in. They're pretty easy to put in. They should just snap into place. They're designed that way. They're an exact fit for this model. Then just snap them into place. Okay, so now we have all these wires are just loose right now. Don't worry about them. These are the lights you're gonna connect these to the wire harness. These are your 4 lights and your sensor wire. The trick is to get this thing lined back up correctly. Few taps and you're back in business here, and then you want to make sure that everything here is going to line up. You've got your line up here, and that these line up. So if everything lines up, you should be good to go. So then we're going to put back in the screws, and then the tabs are going to go back in. I reconnected the sensor, snapped it back together, and then push it up in here and here, so that actually holds the sensor wire back in place. I don't know if you can see it, but I also snapped one snap here and one snap up here. There is an extra right here. When you're ready to connect the lights, it's pretty simple. You take the light and then the wire harness together. They're pretty simple just to plug and play. Snap them in, and that's all you have to do to all 4 of them. So wiring is pretty simple. The ground, the black wire, is going to go up here. All you put a little one of those heads on here, so I can attach it here. And then the positive is going to go back here. If you can see this, the last 10 here is where you're going to connect. That's to your lights. So when you turn your lights on, the Raptor lights go on as well. So we'll pull this fuse out, and we will use an adapter to connect the lights. So you pull that fuse out, pretty simple, and that's where the adapter is going to go. So this is the adapter I'm using. We'll get this all connected before I put the fuse in. Alright, let's connect these 2 reds. 2 positives. There we go. And let's figure out where I'm going to put this wire. This one can go here. Then this one will go over here. Let's get the ground on first. Alright, so we're going to add that here. Reattach that. And let's reattach the fuse, and we'll give it a little test run here, see if it's going to work. Let's get underneath this. I'm going to figure out, I don't want this to crimp the wire, so I'm going to have to probably notch a little bit of this out right here. But let's test it first. So a couple important things. When you put the fuse in, make sure on the adapter you have to have both 10 amp fuses attached to the adapter, or the lights will not work. Push it down that first spot right there. So now should be able to turn the lights on. Lights are on. So there you go, complete install. I just have to tie up the cords and figure out how I'm going to close the battery or the fuse box cover without crimping the wire. So I will notch out a little piece there and do my cleanup, and there you have it. Nice install. Not bad considering I've never tried something like this before. Again, I think the most important thing is just taking your time. There's a lot of plastic parts, it's easy to break.